The heart. It's a high-performance engine, engineered for a lifetime of relentless work. But what happens when that precision machine starts to sputter, when the mechanics begin to fail? Today, we're diving deep into that progressive breakdown we call heart failure. So let's be really clear about what heart failure is. It's not one single event like a heart attack. No, think of it more like a slow, chronic mechanical breakdown where the engine just can't pump out enough power to meet the body's demands anymore.
All right, let's get clinical. Heart failure is defined as a syndrome. And what that really means is it's the end result of some kind of structural or functional problem that messes with the heart's two basic jobs, filling up with blood and pumping that blood out. It's a fundamental issue with the pump itself.
So what's throwing a wrench in the works? Well, the number one culprit, responsible for a whopping 65% of cases, is coronary artery disease. This is like having a major blockage in the engine's main fuel line, starving the heart muscle of the oxygen it desperately needs. Of course, high blood pressure and bad valves also put a ton of chronic strain on the system. Now, this failure can happen in two fundamentally different ways. You have to ask, is the engine failing because it just can't generate enough power? Or is it failing because it's lost its capacity to even hold the fuel in the first place? That distinction is everything. Okay, let's break this down. On one side, you've got systolic failure. That is a power problem. The heart muscle itself is weak. It just can't squeeze hard enough. We measure this with something called ejection fraction. Basically, what percentage of blood gets pumped out with each beat. Here, it's low, under 40%. On the other side, you have diastolic failure. This is a capacity problem. The muscle is so thick and stiff, it can't relax and fill up properly. So even though its pumping force might seem okay, it's starting with a half-empty tank every time.
And you can literally see how these two failures change the engine's design. In systolic failure, the chambers get all thin, weak, and baggy, kind of like an overstretched water balloon. But in diastolic failure, the exact opposite happens. The walls get super thick and rigid, which actually shrinks the amount of space inside for the blood. And what's amazing is you can actually hear the difference. With systolic failure, you might hear an S3 sound, or a ventricular gallop. It's the sound of blood sloshing into one of those baggy, overstretched ventricles. And here's a mnemonic you will never forget. Just take the number 3 and turn it on its side. What does it look like? It perfectly mimics those two big, dilated ventricles. The flip side is the S4 sound. This is the sound of blood being slammed into a stiff, non-compliant ventricle. That's your classic diastolic failure. Now listen, this is critical. While an S3 can sometimes be normal in young athletes, an S4 sound is almost always a red flag. It's a sign that something is wrong. So, a problem with the pump doesn't stay in the heart. It creates this massive, system-wide backup. It's a total domino effect. And the symptoms you see all depend on which side of the pump is failing, the left side or the right. Here is your first absolutely essential mnemonic. When the left side of the heart fails, the fluid backs up to where it just came from. Where was that? The lungs. It does not get simpler than this. L is for left, L is for lungs. And the second part of that mnemonic is just as easy. When the right side of the heart fails, fluid backs up into the veins that are returning blood from the whole body. So R is for right, and R is for the rest of the body. Think legs, abdomen, the veins in your neck.
This table just lays it all out. Left-sided failure, you get lung symptoms, like shortness of breath and coughing. Right-sided failure, you get body symptoms, like swollen legs and bulging neck veins. But here's the kicker, the key to the whole domino effect. Look at the most common cause of right-sided failure. It's left-sided failure. The backup from the lungs eventually just overwhelms the right side of the heart. Okay, so let's put on our mechanics hat. How do we read the engine's error codes to figure out exactly what's going on under the hood? Error code number 1 often comes from a chest X-ray. You're looking for two classic signs. First, cardiomegaly. The heart is just visibly enlarged. And second, you're looking for these tiny horizontal lines out in the periphery called Kerley B lines. That's a sign of high fluid pressure in the lungs. In more severe cases, all that fluid building up can create this very distinct batwing or butterfly look on the X-ray. It's a dramatic image, and it's an unmistakable sign that the lungs are becoming waterlogged because the heart just can't keep up. Next, we check the blood. We're looking for a specific hormone called BNP. You can think of this as a chemical distress signal that the heart cells released when they get stretched out by too much fluid. A level over 100 is a huge clue that you're dealing with heart failure. But the absolute gold standard, the test that gives you the final answer, is the echocardiogram. It's an ultrasound of the heart that lets us watch the engine running in real time. We can see those thin, baggy walls of systolic failure or the thick, stiff walls of diastolic failure, and we can get a precise measurement of that all-important ejection fraction. So once the diagnosis is confirmed, it's time to open up the therapeutic toolbox. We've got tools for long-term engine maintenance, and we've got emergency tools for when things go completely haywire. For the long haul, for chronic management, the mnemonic you need to burn into your brain is BASH. These are the 4 classes of drugs that are proven to reduce mortality. They actually help patients live longer by taking the strain off that failing heart. We're talking beta blockers, ACE inhibitors, spironolactone, and hydrazine. But what happens when the system acutely decompensates? What do you do when a patient rolls into the ER, gasping for air, literally drowning in their own fluid? For that full-blown emergency, the mnemonic is LMNOP. L for Lasix, a heavy-duty diuretic to get fluid off fast. M for morphine, to calm the patient down. N for nitrates, to open up the blood vessels. O for oxygen. And P for position. You sit them upright to let gravity help clear their lungs. And this really brings us to the most critical takeaway. Managing heart failure is not a one-time fix. You can't just replace a spark plug and call it a day. It is a continuous, ongoing process of tuning and adjusting a machine that is chronically compromised. It's a lifelong commitment, a daily mission for both the clinician and the patient, to preserve every last ounce of function that engine has left, to keep it running as smoothly as possible for as long as possible. It's a delicate balance that we have to constantly maintain.